France, and the United States are expected to table a resolution on Syria at the UN Security Council next week. British Prime Minister David Cameron says they want to test whether Russia's plan to eradicate Syria's chemical weapons is, quote, a ruse. So as the world watches the story unfold, what does it mean for the people of Syria? And how will these developments affect President Obama's legacy? Joining me now to talk about this, former U.S. diplomat Hillary Mann Leveret, who served under President George W. Bush as well as President Clinton. She is also co-author of the book, Going to Tehran, Why the United States Must Come to Terms with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Also with us, U.S. Syrian pro-democracy activist and academic Najib Ghadbian. He is a member of the opposition Syrian Coalition. Great to have both of you on the show. Hillary, I talked to you not too long ago, and at that time I was saying, why not have the president go to Congress and ask for authorization? And then, of course, that happened. A lot of things have happened. What do you think about these developments of late?
I think they're all constructive. It was important for the president to go to Congress because that is U.S. law. And what we see is a vibrant debate happened here in the United States. The American people stood up and said they don't want to go into essentially another mistaken war. That has also prompted real constructive diplomacy on the world stage. Russia, which has been pushing for a diplomatic solution for 2 years with China, with Iran, is now in the driver's seat, is now center stage trying to push forward a constructive diplomatic way forward. This is really the only way for the United States to retain its influence and credibility in the Middle East, globally, and to save Syrians.
Now, Najib, what's your take on it?
I disagree with that kind of take about Russia's role, particularly. I don't trust Russia. Syrians don't trust Russia. Russia is, in fact, a partner in the crimes committed against Syrian people. That's how we see it. But I do believe that the president decided to go to Congress, and I do see that the American public did not have a stomach to go for another war. I understand that. But I think the fact that the president put the threat of the use of force on the table, he was able to get somewhere. Something has been lacking from all basically political initiatives.
I disagree with that fundamentally. This has been a powerful meme here in Washington that the threat of the use of force is what has brought us to diplomacy. That is not true. The threat of the use of force and the use of force without UN Security Council authorization is illegal and it is ineffective. Other countries have been pushing a diplomatic negotiated solution for 2 years. 100,000 Syrians have had to die because we like to demonize various players in the international relations, whether it's Putin in Russia, whether it's our friends in China, whether it's Assad in Syria. We demonize them instead of focusing on a constructive way forward. What can we do to bring parties together and negotiate? It is illegal and it is ineffective to threaten and to use force.
Let me give Najib a chance to jump in here because I saw you shaking your head.
It was Russia that paralyzed the Security Council. Russia and China used the veto, Russia primarily really used it 3 times. The first time refused to basically condemn the use of violence. The second time refused to endorse a political solution that's introduced by the Arab League, which later on 137 countries in the General Assembly endorsed. And it was Russia that refused to introduce consequences for the lack of cooperation of the Syrian regime when they were international observers. So it was Russia that obstructed the Security Council and the international community, and that's why I think finally the Obama administration had to, in fact, put the credible threat of the use of force on the table, and that's, I think, what's going to get us anywhere.
But, Najib, we can respectfully disagree about the role of Russia, whether we like it or not, but the problem is, and this is a central problem to the Syria conflict and for the United States worldwide in its global affairs, Russia is a permanent member of the Security Council. You can't ignore it, you can't fight it, you can't defeat it. Just the same with Assad. And the problem is, the longer you keep your head in the sand, the more Syrians will die, and the more the United States is going to lose its power in international affairs. It's not like we're going to win at the end of the day. Putin is in the driver's seat. Russia and China took a principled stand.
Let's give Najib a chance to jump in
when you put it this way in the passive sense, more Syrians would be killed. It's the Assad regime that's killing Syrians. He killed 126.
There's a civil war.
I'm sorry. From day one, when the demonstrators were protesting peacefully and started in Daraa, they never stopped the killing. You could
2 years ago, if the Syrian opposition had agreed to come to peace talks and had abided by the ceasefire, 100,000 people just wouldn't be dead.
We endorse every single initiative, the Arab League one. I do believe if you want a solution, it must begin with the departure of Assad, especially now he used chemical weapons. Especially he used chemical. There must be an accountability. You mentioned the draft by the 3P. If there is no accountability in that draft, no peace solution would go anywhere.
Your formula is for another 15-year civil war like we had in Lebanon. Another 15 years in Lebanon, or another million people dead like we had in Iraq.
Why do you insist on keeping one person and sacrifice 7 million displaced and 100,000?
I'm saying
what does it mean to you, Bashar al-Assad?
Negotiated settlement like we had in Iraq.
What is it in Bashar al-Assad?
Okay, okay. Hold on for just a second. Let me throw out one of the comments that Putin made because you brought him up.
Sure.
This was in the op-ed in the New York Times, which everyone seems to be talking about. He said a strike would increase violence and unleash a new wave of terrorism. It could undermine multilateral efforts to resolve the Iranian nuclear problem and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and further destabilize the Middle East and North Africa. You don't agree with that?
I don't agree with that. I do believe there must be a role for Russia. And we are in the opposition. We reached out to Russia 5 times. I went twice to Russia to talk about Russia's role in the in a democratic transition in Syria. The problem with Russia, I think, is that they are committed to the survival of Assad. And I think everybody else doesn't see that way. The other issue, of course, they're using Syria to raise their status internationally, for Putin domestically. So it's much more complicated. It's not about Syria. It's not about Syria.
And I think that's a problem. It's also not about Russia. It's not unique to Russia. This is a common stand that Russia has, China has, Iran has, India has, South Africa has. Most of the rest of the world outside of London, Paris, Tel Aviv, and Washington have this same view, which is not to allow forcible regime change, which is against the UN Charter, it's against international law, and there's a reason for it, because they don't want the forced change in the balance of power. There is a reason for that. It is the cardinal pillar of international law.
Let me stop you there, because I do want to get you to jump in here on that as well. Should the United States be determining who the leader is of this country? I mean, this has been something that, they've done in the past. Mubarak's got to go. Assad's got to go. Gaddafi. Is that a role that the United States should be playing? Shouldn't it be the Syrian people deciding this?
Well, it's of course should be the Syrian people. And the Syrian people said there what they wanted to do long time ago. First of all, this is an illegitimate regime. Bashar al-Assad inherited his power by force, basically. He was not elected. He was never legitimate. And he absolutely lost every legitimacy when he used force against Syrian people in the first week of the demonstration, when he opened fire at demonstrators. So he had no legitimacy whatsoever. Now, countries have the right to say whatever they think, whatever they want. But I think we do believe that the Syrian people on the right side of history, they are asking for basic rights, freedom, dignity, equal opportunity from a regime that's ruled by iron fist. You know Syria, you know the Syrian regime. Your husband wrote about it. He's an expert on that. You know that very well. People of Syria, like everybody else in the Arab Spring, wanted change, and they wanted it by gradual means first, reformist agenda, but he absolutely never accepted that. Even before the latest use of chemical weapons by the regime, he did not believe in a political solution. He sent a message, I'm going to run in 2014 and I'm going to win that. That's the mentality we are dealing with.
Look, I was in my first meeting with the father Assad, Hafez al-Assad, 30 years ago in 1990, a 7-hour meeting. I certainly do know Syria, and I know a lot of the other countries in the region. I also know American foreign policy, and I know that we have been told, whether it is by Chinese expatriates against the People's Republic of China, whether it was Iraqi expatriates against Saddam Hussein, whether it's Cuban expatriates against Fidel Castro, or now Syrian expatriates, with all due respect, against Hafez al-Assad, that all they want is freedom and democracy, and all the United States has to do is invade. 1 million people of their dead compatriots later, and squandered U.S. influence, treasure, military, and political power. We have lost so much, so fast, and for so little listening to these people. If they want to change their internal domestic political structure, ahlan wa sahlan, as they say in Arabic, go ahead and do it.
And that's what we're doing.
That is not something the United States should be anywhere near. It is against international law for a reason.
Let me get you to jump in here as well, because Hillary's making some points here. I mean, the United States went into Iraq. A lot of people would say Iraq's not in better shape.
I oppose that.
Afghanistan, they went in there. It's not in better shape.
Libya.
How they've waffled on Egypt, so do you really think the United States being injected in this would be a good thing?
Well, let me tell you this. The Syrian regime, the Syrian issue is not a purely Syrian issue anymore. You have the Syrian regime getting support of Iran, Hezbollah, Russia, and the Iraqi government. And we have 120 countries recognize our group as the legitimate representative of the Syrian people. But those 3.5 countries are doing and offering the Assad regime much more than all of these countries combined. So it's not wrong for us, the Syrian people, who started from inside Daraa and from Hama and from Homs and everywhere.
I'm going to have to interrupt because we're running out of time. We've got about a minute and a half, and I want to get your thoughts on this. What if the chemical weapons are off the table, but Assad stays in power?
Absolutely not acceptable. This is not about the weapon that was used to kill Syrians. It's about the criminal. There must be an accountability in order to have a political solution. Geneva II still, I think, is a good framework, and Geneva II does not leave space for Assad as we understand it, as we interpret it. And after the use of chemical weapon, we must emphasize accountability.
We've got about a minute left. I'm going to give you the last word on this.
I think the chemical weapons issue was either a ruse and or a pretext. It really was a sideshow, and I think Najib and I would agree with that. But in contrast to Najib, I think it has been a critical opening to get constructive negotiations going forward, and we should seize the day.
And is there the potential for an agreement as a result of these initial
There is,
talks?
and you know, Lakhdar Brahimi, the UN envoy, he has done this kind of agreement in Iraq and Afghanistan, where I worked with him in Haiti and Somalia and Lebanon. He wrote the peace accord for Lebanon that ended 15 years of civil war. We should give him a chance, respect the Russian role, deal with it whether you like them or not, because they're a permanent member of the Security Council, like China, like other countries.
I think we're out of time, but both of you, thank you for bringing the heat to the heat. Certainly appreciate it.